Good morning, everybody, and a very warm welcome to today's episode. It's a solo show again. I'm not actually sure where Johann is today. He's not messaged to say that he is or he isn't turning up on today's one, so we can only assume he's still having internet issues. Hopefully he's enjoying his holiday, and yeah, wish him a safe journey back for next week. So what is today's episode? Well, episode is number 91. The date is the 22nd of July 2024, and this is your show as well. So in the comment section, let me know if anyone is willing to jump on and talk live and give your opinions on today's topic. So today's topic, we have Dext. This had some news finally, some really good news actually, so we're looking forward to talking about that. And then the final topic, and the only other topic, because I've got a feeling it's going to be quite a short show today, is Xero versus QuickBooks. Now, there's a reason for it. I'm not just pulled this out of anything. We've got a video over at the Bofix channel comparing the two solutions. But what I wanted to do is make sure that, have I missed something? Is there something that I have done wrong here? And should I be looking at this in a different way? So for any Xero fans out there, please do keep me honest on this one. It'll be interesting to know if you feel that my test versus QuickBooks were fair or enough, but we'll talk about that later on. So yes, today is the 91st episode. It's 22nd of July, and we'll start the show off as we always do, just talking about the week, and also talking about people who have joined. So good morning to Michelle Coleman over at Instagram, and the other three that have just joined on Instagram as well. Good morning to Cheryl. Hope you are doing well. Good morning to Natasha. Hope you are doing well. Good morning to Marcus. Good morning to you, sir. And good morning to Kirsty, who's not just saying morning to myself, but morning to everybody as well. So great to see. All right, let's go into our first bit of news then. And to be fair, our only proper bit of news for the week. It seems like it's a bit of a quieter week at this moment in time. But Dex to roll out 3 products into one platform. And good morning to you as well, Dave. 3 products into one platform and add some new features. Now, this is exciting times, isn't it? It's definitely not surprise to anyone when I have been saying that Dex itself needs to be figuring out a way to make sure that it can be comparable at the price point it wants to go for. For me, Dex is a fantastic, good piece of equipment, but it's decided to price itself at the higher end so that it can then be there as a premium product. And most part, it's a premium product. Most part, it does stuff that nothing else can do on the platform. With it's able to be able to bring in certain aspects of it, and especially when it comes to accuracy and everything else. But one thing that it's definitely needed was just that part that could actually put itself against the rest. And for me, this update that's coming through seems like it's going down the right direction. Definitely seems like it's going to have a place in a lot of people's practices going forward. So what are they doing? Well, they're basically bringing all 3 of their, I would say, most popular platforms and putting it all into one. So currently there's Dex Prepare, Dex Precision, and Dex Commerce. And the idea here is that it wants to bring all of that into one platform. Now that does sound exciting, right? Okay, think about the idea of this one. In pricing, everything is obviously subject to be announced and figure out going forward. But the idea that not only could you get your data extraction, so invoice or expense documents could be directly taken out, OCR technology, going through from there, loving that. But also at the same time, you automatically have access to Dex Position, which in my opinion is their best feature. Dex Position to me is that idea of where you can look at the quality of the data, you can get a nice little health score of it, you can see how that all goes, and you get a score coming back of basically how clean or how not clean that client's data is going to be. So loving that. So adding those two together makes a lot of sense. And then they're not only doing that, but they're also bringing their Dex Commerce platform into it as well, which basically means if you attach this one platform to a client, you can bring in all their Amazon, eBay, any of their e-commerce platforms coming through. You can bring in any of their data extraction tools, so OCR technology, to bring the data in and put that through from there. Loving that. So actually getting the data into a client should be easier than ever. You add one platform and off to the races you go. Whereas at the moment, it's a little bit convoluted by having these 3 different platforms and having to connect different free ones and having different UIs and all that sort of stuff. So bringing it all into one, loving that idea. That's going to be brilliant. And then finally, it's going to have the opportunity to do the DEX position as well. So it's basically forcing you almost to use all 3 parts of the platform. And I really do think that's going to be a huge opportunity to bring it in. Good morning to Suzanne, who's come in as well. Good morning to Clive. And also had a chat with Paul Lodder, and their plans ahead are pretty interesting. Excellent. Oh, I mean, if you've got time, Clive, jump on, and we can talk about that in more detail. Just let us know. Yeah, I mean, for me, that's the exciting bit. The fact that that platform is going to be all in one, is all going to have an opportunity to basically connect one connection, and you're off to the races. That's exactly the future that we need, right? But it gets better. So not only that, but they've got some more functionality coming as well. A new DEX mileage functionality. This will allow DEX customers to create mileage claim on the web or mobile app, either by recording the trip automatically or after the trip. So I can only assume, but very, very similar to how QuickBooks' app deals with mileage. With that, it uses GPS technology so that when you jump in the car, as long as you've got the mobile phone on you, it's going to record you going from A to B. And at the end of that journey, you can decide if that was a business or a personal trip. I love that functionality. Mileage is one of those ones that's an easy win, right? Like, how many of your clients out there are not claiming enough mileage or estimating mileage and not having too much information behind it, which could have risks for, HMRC and saying no to it going forward. So I absolutely are happy with this functionality. If it's as powerful as it is on the QuickBooks platform, they're in for a treat, right? Like anyone who's got that DEX. And it also gives a reason to download the DEX app, because one of the biggest issues, and we'll come to this when we do the Xero versus QuickBooks functionality, is, well, we've got a bit of a app fatigue at the moment, right? If we can, we want to prevent our clients from having to download hundreds of apps from day one. So when we do make them go and download an app, we need to have justification for it. DEX always had the justification, well, you can snap your receipts and they come in. Great, wonderful, fantastic. But the fact that we can also tell them that they've got a chance of having their mileage functionality in there as well, assuming it's all in the same app, that is, and hopefully that's how it's going to come through. Loving that. I think that's a great idea. Also, approval workflow functionality. So they've been talking about this for a while now. It's great to see that that's actually definitely 100% on its way, and 100% got a date for, I think they said November 2024 was when they'll bring this out. But this again is one of those functionalities that if you're wanting to try to push yourself as that premium product, this is where this comes into. And the idea then would be, not only can you scan the documents in there, but you can get them approved for payment, approved for making sure that they're correct, those sort of elements. And for a lot of clients out there, that is one of the reasons why they need to have that functionality, so that they can then make sure that payments are being done correctly, and pushing through from there. So good to see that. Approval workflow will work really, really nice. And then for me, the big one is the supply statement extraction and verification functionality. So the idea that if your client has got supply statements and you want to get them into DEX easily, or QuickBooks or Xero easily, then this really does help bring that information in. The idea there that you can put the statement on there, it will look and see if we've got all of the relevant invoices and credit notes, and make sure that everything's been included. And if not, hopefully we'll be able to bring that functionality in for us as well. For some of my clients, that's going to be absolutely huge. It doesn't affect all of our clients, but for those clients who need this functionality, again, when you're looking at a premium offer and a premium product, I think this is absolutely brilliant. So really, really excited to see this one all laid out. Supply statement looks at DEX and QBO, unlike your 200, looks at went through auto entry. Yeah. I heard the same thing actually, Clive, which is fantastic, and that's a great point to make. So the point there is that auto entry is only looking at what's already been extracted and put in there, which is fine. but Dex is going to basically replicate what's already on the supplier in your QuickBooks and Xero, and then hopefully then fill in the gaps. For me, I hope there's also that reconciliation feature built in there, because that's the key for us, right? What we want to be able to do is be able to go at a month end or quarter end or whatever we're going to do. We want to be able to go to those suppliers where this is meaningful. And again, it won't be all your suppliers on every single client. It's only going to be a select few where this is going to be really needed. But for those clients who heavily rely on statements and part paying statements and payments relating to what's actually outstanding on statements itself, this could be huge. And the idea then that we could extract that data, hopefully have a reconciliation process to say, that our supplier still owes us, or we still owe the supplier X amount. I think that's where the feature of this goes. And especially if you've got that with Dex Position as well, and it's all in one product, well, that's quite exciting, right? Because that's the opportunity for us to go, do you know what? We can extract the data nice and easily using any of the tools we've got, OCR technology, or even in some cases the greenback functionality, the Dex commerce functionality as well. And then we've got all the data going in there. We've got the statements section to be able to reconcile that and to be able to extract that data in. Loving that. That sounds brilliant. And then finally at the end of it, and don't forget, we've got workflow as well to make sure that we're approving the right ones ready to go in and having all that functionality. And then finally at the end of it, overarching is going to be their Dex Position tool, which is basically going to tell you, is this client clean? Is this not clean? Is there anything we should be looking at? Using AI, using machine learning to have a look at it, figure out what's right, what's wrong. I'm liking the idea of it. And this does put Dex then in that premium tier, right? Because they already had arguably probably one of the most accurate ones out there, but what they were lacking was having a coherent solution. Now they've got the opportunity to bring it there. Mileage and approval tools will be available at no extra cost as part of the new platform, and supplier statement extraction and verification functionality will be available at additional extra costs yet to be determined. So exciting times all around. Unless I've missed anything, in Clive, if you could let us know if this is the case. They haven't told us what the new pricing is going to be to have all of this in one platform. I assume it's the same pricing as it is now, but just access from the same platform. But it'd be really good to see kind of like a bundled price. One client, activate all three of those services. It's X price, slightly cheaper maybe than taking all three on at the same time. That's what I'd love to see. And when you're on the same platform, hopefully, hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get some sort of bundle pricing later down the line. But as Clive's agreed, it's no change to pricing at this point in time, which makes sense. I don't think they, all the controversy they've had with the pricing lately is probably not the right time to start talking about price changes or anything like that. For this, makes sense to add it for the extraction as a premium on top feature, because you're not going to use it on every client anyway. So I get behind that one. I understand that one. But fingers crossed when it does launch in November or September, I think it is, for the early adopters, then hopefully at that point there's some incentive to take all three solutions at the same time. Let's find a way to work with them on that one. I think that would really, really give us a chance to be on, because that's the dream, right? If you can have all three of these solutions working on a client, Dex Position, Dex Commerce, and the extracting solution all in one there, then we would have a reason to be able to bring more of the Dex clients over. Cool. And Clive confirms the supply statements will be credit based. So very, very similar to how auto entry works, right? And auto entries, supplier statement and bank statement extraction technology is all based on credits. That's how there's always been, and to be fair, it works really well. You just got to manage your credits as a practice and move on from there. So great to see that from Dex. Exactly what we need, if I'm completely honest, and good to see it. All right then. So brilliant, cool. The next one then to go through. Okay, so we've got some more people join us in the world of Instagram. Steph, you might want to hang around for this one, because we're going to be discussing QuickBooks versus Xero, and then we've got some other ones coming through as well. Used QuickBooks ever since I started my business, and then there's a message here about how ever since they've been using start their business, they've been using QuickBooks. So great to hear from that one. Fantastic. Right. Again, it might be a shorter show today, but that's absolutely fine. Let's talk about my main topic for today. Now, the main topic for today, straightforward enough, is the fact that I'm a little bit concerned about a video project that we've got in the pipeline. So for anyone who doesn't know, the way that we deal with our videos at the moment here at Bofix and at QuickBooks, as in the Aaron Patrick QuickBooks chat channel, is we do one for Tuesday and we do another one for Thursday. And we've not missed that upload schedule for 4 years or so now, or something daft. But this one, though, coming up is a QuickBooks versus Xero video. Now, we've done this video before in the past, and they've gone down really, really well. But this time round, I did it slightly differently. So previously, we've had guests on who's been subject matter experts at the world of Xero, and we've been able to kind of test them into what they think of it. But I've noticed lately that actually the trend hasn't been to bring on an expert, but actually give your own opinion on it. And that's exactly what I've done in this particular video. Now, we're going to break down the video in a little bit of detail in a moment. But what I wanted to ask you guys for is, how fair do you think these tests are? Because I did 4 different tests, QuickBooks versus Xero. One of them, I'll be completely honest, I knew the outcome was going to be a landslide victory for QuickBooks, but it just highlighted an issue that Xero had. And fair enough, you know, you're going to have those, and every software has strengths and has weaknesses, right? This is one of the strengths of QuickBooks, one of the weaknesses of Xero. Fine, that's absolutely fine. But what I was struggling to understand was why I was so far out of kilter with some of the other tests. And I feel like it's because when I was doing it from the Xero point of view, I wasn't doing it in the right way. So before we go into a little bit more detail and we talk about those differences, all those tests that I did, let's first of all look at some of the older versions of the QuickBooks versus Xero videos, just to set the scene a little bit, and a little bit of reacts here. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to bring up an older video of mine, and we're going to be talking about exactly what we had in there. So let me just show you on screen here. Hopefully you can hear it. And we're going to show QuickBooks versus Xero. We had a special guest for this one. So we had Rachel Harris at the time now. Rachel.
It was a little bit, wasn't it? He was very confident.
And we had her coming on basically as the subject matter expert for Xero. And we did a little comparison between. And we had an opportunity here to kind of go away, and there was all 3 of us here. Producer Lizzie was involved in this one as well. And the concept of this video was that we were able to go off and complete various tasks, then find out which tasks, not only based on speed, but also give us the opportunity to be able to understand exactly the accuracy of it as well. And also, you know, from Lizzie's point of view, which one she preferred, like which was the better way of doing it. Steph also says, I think there'll be a bit of confirmation bias because it's what you know. Completely. And I think my biggest issue is when we come to the new video is, did I actually approach this task the right way in Xero? And I got a feeling I did, and I'm based on what I know of Xero and kind of its strengths and stuff, I feel like I did, but it felt like I was spending too long on it. And Kirsty says, I'm a QuickBooks lover, but I really like the customer invoice owed screen, as you can track the credit control and promised paid dates. Yeah, that's a great point, actually. And that's something I didn't bring into it, and I've just gone on to more. But I really like the customer owed screen, as you can. I also like the supplier summary screen rather than the pay bills within QuickBooks. Brave or still prefer QuickBooks. We know you prefer QuickBooks, Kirsty. But yeah, that's a really good point, actually, because I didn't bring that into the comparison. But let me just show you the previous video first and kind of give you a comparison or a flavor of what we did. So in this video here, we started off basically comparing the 2 products at the beginning, and we had Rachel kind of putting in extracting data into QuickBooks. So it was basically how do we start off in Xero and start off QuickBooks to begin with. So I was actually going through setting the the system up, how easy it was to get us in and all that sort of stuff. And then when we came to actually utilizing the product, first option was creating an invoice, the two different ways of which to do it, which one was preferred. We actually sent the invoice over to producer Lizzie, who basically decided which one she preferred. Aesthetically, this is QuickBooks versus Xero, which one looks better. We also then went through and we then started putting data on easily. So we had two pieces of data we had to bring in, which we, two receipts that we had to bring in. This was the one where, very similar to this current video I'm going to do, you expect QuickBooks to be easier to kind of get this one set up. Receipt capture is built directly in the product. It's got an unfair advantage, if you like, on this one. Had a chance to bring it in. So we were able to bring it over here. We did have a little bit of a joke that Xero took a lot longer, whereas QuickBooks was done within seconds. Because the idea was that, these are the two transactions I've got. Let's just countdown.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
So Rachel went and had to manually put them on because she didn't have Dex. The extraction software all set up.
Do the speed test this time.
I see the date on this invoice.
So Rachel's trying to manually put the information on.
I dragged the files in. I dropped them in there. They're uploading. Job done.
And that's it. They're done. So obviously there was a little bit of an unfair advantage on that one. Then we moved over to bringing in bank data. So they had errors putting it in there because it was on the demo company, whereas QuickBooks were able to bring the data in. And finally, we went to the report section and we talked about reports and how we can build the reports up. Strength of QuickBooks being that we can have that management reports and customize it as much as we can, whereas the Xero side, we didn't have that. And overall, we actually finished off saying that Xero versus QuickBooks, actually, there wasn't a clear winner. It was all on preference, and we very much stood on the fence. That's not the case of this one, though. So I kind of stole our friend over at Jerry Williams, kind of stole her idea, where instead of kind of going through and getting a subject matter expert, as the subject matter expert, we then compared it to the one. So obviously in Jerry's situation here, she is going to be very, very much a case that Xero is going to be the better platform over QuickBooks. Oh, I'm not going to show you the screen, am I? Bring that one in. But the idea on this one was that, well, if we're going to have an opportunity, here we go, this one here. If we want an opportunity to compare QuickBooks with Xero, well, then let's push their best features forward. And that's exactly what Jerry did in hers. She spoke about unlimited users. She spoke about other aspects of it that she believes Xero was better at it as well. Had a few jokes in there. Overall, a very, very good video in terms of the way it was shot, the jokes and everything that was put in there. But ultimately, as she's wearing a Xero t-shirt at this point, Jerry was obviously going to be choosing Xero over QuickBooks. So when you take those two concepts, QuickBooks versus Xero videos always do really, really well, but you only have one person involved in it that's going to be talking, who is a subject matter expert on one. Bias can come into it. So here was my 4 different tests that we did. Test number 1, straightforward, I would say, was, well, how about getting a bank statement into QuickBooks? Now, as I said in the video, most people would rightly say that the best way of getting a video or getting data into QuickBooks or Xero is to connect the bank feed, right? We all know that. And that's by far the best way of getting the data in there. But if you don't have that functionality, why don't you just get a CSV file or get auto entry and use the statement extract tool and get the data into a digital format and bring it in? It seems fair. And hopefully I'm not going to get attacked for saying that that's an unfair comparison, because we should have just connected the bank. It was just about making things easier. The second one, and again very similar to the first video, let's use the mobile app to extract the data and bring the data in. Clearly that from day one, that was going to be a landslide victory for QuickBooks, because there's a receipt capture tool directly in the app. There isn't a receipt capture tool in the Xero app, so we had to then install. But this time around, we did install the software, installed it, and we installed the second piece of software, got that on there, took the photos, and brought that in. Okay, so they was the first two. Basically, how easy is it to get data into QuickBooks and Xero? And we'll talk about the results that we had on that in a moment. The two other exercises, though, was then how easy is it to actually convert that data that we've just extracted in into meaningful transactions. So first one was using that receipt capture tool. How easy was it to convert the photos that we've taken and convert them into transactions that go in there? So, Xero versus QuickBooks, bringing that data in, nice and easy. And then the fourth one, and the one I think I might get a bit of stick for, was we've got 75 transactions in via CSV. So they're all sat there in QuickBooks ready to go. But then how easy was it to bring that data into QuickBooks or bring that data into Xero? So basically reconcile the bank. Now, for me, in the QuickBooks world, and we'll see it as well, I've got the workflow nailed, but there's multiple workflows to be able to do. In fact, I even stopped myself from using the new functionality called QuickBooks Learn, which is basically using AI functionality to bring that data in automatically where you don't even touch it, right? So the idea would be that it reads those 75 transactions, figures it out for you, asks you if it's happy, and then you can just extract them all at the same time. In the Xero world, didn't have that functionality, so it would have been really unfair to let QuickBooks use AI to bring the data in and Xero not to have that one. So QuickBooks was already at a disadvantage at this point, right? So in the QuickBooks world, though, I know multiple workflows to get that data in. There's only 75 transactions, shouldn't take too long. Question to the Xero people out there: how would you process 75 brand new transactions? Where you got to go from there. For me, I went over to the cash and coding area and just coded it directly off the statement, thinking that was the easiest way to do. It felt like, that wasn't the quickest way to do. As you'll see in the video, it was completely, a much longer process than having to go through the QuickBooks process. And two, it felt glitchy and it felt like I was fighting the coding more than I've ever done before. For example, if I'd want to put it to a particular area, I'd type the number in, 251 or whatever the category is going to be, and it would take a couple of seconds to catch up with me to then get that information in. So my questions to you guys is, was that the right thing to do? Should I have used coding in the first place? And two, is it me, or is the cache coding area now quite glitchy, or was that just based on me? Was it just an unlucky file that I was using, or bad time for me to be logged into Xero at that point in time? So that's kind of where I'm at the moment with it. So if I show you the pre-video, now full context of this one as well, we don't have, at this point in time, this hasn't been edited at all. This is behind the scenes information before it gets edited. But again, it's more of a comparison to go through from it. So first part of the video was setting this file up, as you can imagine. Makes sense. Second part of the video, though, was trying to get that data in through CSV. Now, when I got it through on this is the CSV file itself, should be straightforward enough, right? There's the date range, there's debits and credits, there's a balance. From a typical kind of CSV file, this should be easy. I forgot about this in the Xero world when I first did it, but I didn't map it. I didn't actually come to put this together, or didn't correct the CSV file beforehand, and didn't use the template that Xero had provided me from day one. And I left this in the video because for me, I feel like this is a negative hit on Xero, where you can't just throw any CSV file at Xero and let it, map the data in accordingly so you can get the data in. You have to have it in a particular Xero format. Otherwise, because in this case, I didn't have a plus or minus figure for the amount, I was unable to bring this into Xero. So yeah, it wasn't a difficult fix. Literally an equals button plus and a minus, and I was able to create and make sure that the file was ready to go in. But I did put a knock against Xero for that one, because for me, I feel like QuickBooks just has a much easier import functionality because you don't need to change the one. So I've got a feeling I'm going to get stick for that, but I feel like that's just one of those things. here it is on the QuickBooks side. Getting that data in was really straightforward. I was just having to put these formatters in, see the debits and credits are sat there, able to bring that in there. Did I forget about the 01? Yeah, completely. And I should have really thought about that. Maybe got a file that was easier to import, but it does highlight that if your file isn't Xero friendly, it's not allowed to go in. Whereas QuickBooks, you can adapt it to anything you want and bring that in if you need to. So that was my first kind of red flag. Here's me then having to actually manually fix the CSV file. So it's ready to go in and put it into the Xero format, ready to rock and roll. Then I got the data in, so I was happy. And then at this point, though, I then had to use HubDoc, as we said before, to get those other extractions in. Able to get that information in there and simplified it as much as I possibly can. Able to get the data in as best I can. And I feel like that's a fair representation, right? Yes, I'm having to use HubDoc, but HubDoc's free of charge. There's a little bit of annoyance having to sign into another piece of software, and I had to install another piece of software on the phone. But I feel like that's just that's fair enough. I don't think there's any, major benefit one way or another of that one, other than the fact it's just simplified on the QuickBooks platform. And I think from accuracy point of view, they're pretty much similar. But this is definitely my bit that I need help on, is how else would you have done this, right? There was 75 transactions to get into QuickBooks, into Xero, should I say. And 26, 28, I started on this one. And I was cash coding, having issue after issue where I was putting in some of these codes and they weren't I was trying to put code in here, wait for it to actually put my one in. So if I do 835, I switch to something else. Again, tried to, and I don't remember ever having this problem before. So in my mind, I'm thinking that I messed up here by trying to cache code it where I should have maybe just used the other screen, because those 75 transactions took, however long this is going to be, the real times will come out. Probably, let's say 10 minutes it took, right, to put that information in there. I then did, as I always do, bash the reconcile screen, but that's fair enough, right? Yes, you now have this new fancy, you can set the reconcile statement here, but it doesn't lock it in place or anything like that. And that's clearly an advantage to QuickBooks. Because when I went to the QuickBooks world, again, I didn't use the functionality of putting it through from there, but I was able to use grouping, and I was done in half the time. And it would have been quicker. I even had to switch on VAT at this point because I'd forgot to switch on VAT because I used a brand new software, a brand new license. So it could have been a third of the time if I'd really put my back into it. And that's my question really to you guys. How would you have approached something as simple as putting 75 transactions? It isn't a lot of transactions, right? And if I'm that much quicker on the QuickBooks side than Xero side, what am I doing wrong in Xero to bring it in there? Because the video will highlight that realistically, it took a long time to do that. Let's see what you guys are saying then. Let's have a look at this one. So comments. Right. Paul says, perhaps do two parts of the video, one from an accountant's point of view and the other one from a client. Now, I really like that. The thing is, the thing of that one is, and this is something I've been saying and maybe unfairly criticizing Xero for, right? Xero's strength is if you work within the Xero workflow, then Xero can be a really powerful tool to use. And I think that's fair to say, right? If you have the, you attach the bank the right way, you get the file format in the right way from the banks from day one, you work with it, instead of doing it the way I was doing with coding, but you really lean into making sure the rules are in place, and you go down. If you work within that workflow, and probably actually what would have been even better from a Xero point of view is if I'd ever extracted more data from HubDoc and put all that sort of stuff in. I feel that Xero's strengths is if you work within its boundaries, then you get really good results, clean, tidy from day one. It's always going to go in much better, and very few kind of adjustments will be needed, right? And in fairness, there their reasoning for not having a full-blown reconciliation product is, well, if you do it right in the first place, you don't need a reconciliation product, right? Like if you put the transactions in correctly, then you don't need to worry about it. So, what's in your banks is in your bank. And I think from a Xero point of view, if I was to do a client versus accountant, then you would have to make sure that that client was right within the recommended way to use Xero. And again, if you do the recommended way to use Xero, absolutely fine. My flip to that is, from a QuickBooks point of view, is it's much more open. You can put data in multiple ways. It's not as restrictive. And if you were to accidentally put something in wrong, you've got so many great tools to fix it that actually it's not that big a problem. You can take a messier file from QuickBooks and a messier file from Xero. Xero is never designed to be that messy to begin with. So Xero never gives you as many tools to clean it up. Whereas QuickBooks gives you every tool in the world to quickly clean a set of, a messy set of accounts up, or messy bookkeeping solution from there. So for me, if I was going to do a accountant's view versus client view, I'd have to be really restrictive on what the client can do. Now, maybe that video is more of a first impressions. Like, which one do they prefer aesthetically? Which one do they prefer, maybe putting on one transaction or something like that? I can kind of see a video idea brewing from that. But I feel like if we were trying to do a versus video, then we'd have to make sure that the Xero workflow is done to the T. And then if we try and replicate that in QuickBooks, it just feels like we're not really gaining anything. Yeah, we could, but from a fair comparison, would need to do one or the other. So yeah, let me know if you think that's fair or not. Taking a novice view by a typical client would be help understand the challenges and could be a fair comparison. Completely. But again, I feel back to it. Isn't the reason that Xero is so popular at the moment is because Xero want them to go into a particular way. And it's almost like, if you do it the Xero way, you're rewarded for doing it the Xero way. If you follow the Xero workflow, then it's, it works 99% of the time, no issues, no problems. Something as simple I always bring back is, if you need to gross up a piece of income, right? In QuickBooks, we've got multiple ways to do it. We can use control accounts. We can use split functionality. We can use a match plus resolve difference. There's loads of options for us to be able to bring that data in there. In the Xero world, yes, we can do it, but we have to follow that prescribed way of doing it, right? Like, we have to go into the transaction. We then need to go to resolve difference, and we need to go through that element. And we can get to the end result, but we have to follow their guidelines and their way of doing it. Otherwise, you'll just get error messages, or you won't get the final result, right? So again, if we're going to take a novice view of it, that's why I feel like it's almost an unfair comparison, because for me, Xero is, if you've got a little bit of bookkeeping knowledge behind you, you'll probably fly through Xero, right? Like, but you need that first bit of knowledge behind you. With QuickBooks, it's designed from the smallest of small clients to the largest of large client, and they've got a skew everywhere in. So they've got solutions where you don't need to know your way around debits and credits to be able to use QuickBooks. And I feel like, yeah, it'd be an interesting video, but it's almost an unfair comparison, if you know what I mean. Like, I don't feel like Xero and QuickBooks, from a client's point of view, are even aimed at the same type of client. Xero has its perfect client, its perfect type of client that it aims at, size, type, industry. Like, if you are in that ecosystem and that's, you tick all the boxes from a Xero, and yeah, you can have a great experience with Xero. But if you are outside of that ecosystem, you're outside of that ideal client basis, then I don't feel like Xero's always going to be best for you. You're going to be battling against it. You're going to be fighting against it all the time. And I do feel like that's where QuickBooks versus Xero debate becomes really difficult to do in a fair manner, like in an unbiased manner. Well, if we had the perfect client for Xero, then yeah, it's going to fly. But if we didn't have the perfect client for Xero, then it'll be unfair, because QuickBooks is, better suited for everything, right? Like, QuickBooks' strength at the moment is it can go from the smallest small client to the largest large client and any industry in between. Like, it's a toolkit that can be adapted for any type of client, for any size, anything else. where QuickBooks is laser focused now. And XeroCon proved that, right? XeroCon was, we know what our client base is, we know what we're good at, and we're going to be making sure we improve on there. So when you're trying to do a comparison video, it's really difficult to put it through from there. Paul also says, CSV formats is always a problem for many software. I love that QuickBooks lets you map after the import. Yeah, and I felt like I was, look, at the end of the day, when you put any video out there on any platform, or you do any piece of, any content, right? If you put a piece of content out there and you are trying to, and you're trying to do any form of opinion, then you're gonna get people from both sides of the industry either defending or attacking, right? Like that's how it's going to work. And a video like this, that's obviously going to be divisive because it's going to be QuickBooks versus Xero. I'm always going to get stick for my approach. I'm always going to get stick, and I get that. Is it fair though, in this scenario, to highlight that Xero doesn't give you, because Xero does give you the tool to do it, right? They have that import mapping template. You get the import mapping template. If you again, back to my whole point with Xero, if you follow their rules and follow their way of doing things, it works brilliantly. So for me to grab the data, put it in the importing tab tool, goes through from there. In QuickBooks, I didn't have to do that. How often is that going to be a problem? Probably not. Like, it's probably not going to be a big issue, is it? But it is definitely something that I put there. And again, for me, it's, what is that unfair? Is that an unfair comparison? Like Paul says here, loves the fact QB lets you just do it, like get on with it. Like, here's the tools to get you do the job. Like, maybe it's not as, straightforward possibly because you're not in that format. But then again, how many clients out there would feel comfortable mapping a piece of document, like grabbing data from one CSV file and putting it into the other, grabbing this here and putting that? For us as accountants and bookkeepers, we find it super simple, right? Like it's part and parcel of what we do. We do it all the time. But from a client's point of view, is it that straightforward? You tell me, have you got clients who, because I certainly have clients who wouldn't have a clue of that. I went on record the other day to saying how I lost a client because I asked a client to not send me a PDF bank statement, but to send me a CSV bank statement. And I actually lost the client for that phrase of saying, look, you've never asked for me of this before. Why are we changing the way that we've been doing things for the past couple of years? Everything what needs to be, and I lost the relationship with the client because I asked for a CSV file over a PDF file. Because that scared them, because they didn't know, they couldn't figure it out. They were banging their head against the wall. They couldn't figure out how to, obtain the CSV over a PDF. Again, as accountants bookkeepers, it seems straightforward, but clients out there, they find it difficult. So I wonder how much that plays into a client's mentally, psyche of having to do it. Yeah. So, but then I suppose most of the time the answer is don't CSV import, just bring it in as a, Steph says, I think the video could be client specific. This over on Instagram. E.g., if you are a X type of client, QuickBooks is best suited because, and then the same for Xero. I get that. And I 100% support that. As accountants and bookkeepers, we need to be very, very agnostic in certain situations, right? We need to be very honest with clients and say, look, this software is better for you, or this software is better for you. That's our role, right? We're business advisors as well as accountants, bookkeepers, right? We take that mantra on, trying to make sure from a client's point of view that we're giving the best possible advice we can. But in certain situations, it feels like to have Xero be the preferred use, you have to have a particular type of client. I don't know. I don't know how big that type of client is. And that's why I kind of need an expert matter from Xero to tell me, like, what is that ideal client? How big, how small, what industries, what is it? Because for me, out of my client base, I have a handful of Xero clients, but they're very much feature based. It's because, and we've already talked about the approval process, right? Because the approval process is directly within Xero, I've got a handful of clients where that's a huge aspect of their business. they need to have that functionality. So having that functionality baked directly into the FMS solution, the bookkeeping solution, is a non-negotiable. And yes, in QuickBooks world, I could bring them into advanced, but it still doesn't have that quite same element of it. So, saying that a client is better suited for this and better suited for that is true, but I don't know how broad the Xero client base is going to be. In my mind, being very QuickBooks centric and being on the other side of the fence, I see that as quite a small client base and quite a small type of client. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just oversimplifying it. But again, the big one for me was cash coding the right way, because that took forever. That was a really long and boring way of getting that data in there. And I couldn't use any of the fancy tools I get over on the QuickBooks side to be able to get that data in nice and quickly. So again, it'd be great to know if I could have done that a better way, because that to me is where I think Xero really let itself down. It was just because it's so restrictive, it wasn't letting me get the information in quicker. What's Kirsty say? Kirsty says, I found that on QuickBooks, that tick in the box for check number for added info on a file on 800 lines stops it important, probably just me. Yeah, I've had that issue before as well. I feel like that's one of those ones where, we just don't bring as many in at the time, and we have to kind of bring that feature in. I know they've only recently increase the amount that we can bring in. So remember, it was only 500 that you could bring in for a while. I think when they went from 500 to 1,000, I think that's kind of one of the ones where we've had this issue coming through. But yeah, it's a great point. I think you're right. I think that's the sort of thing we need to feed back to them to hopefully think we go through. Highlight first and last. It should let you bulk code. No, I tried that. So I ticked on the Xero, ticked on the thing, but it doesn't give you a bulk code option. That's not there, right? So yeah, maybe I should have looked into it a bit more, but yeah, there wasn't a bulk code functionality, which surprised me. But because I used to love the cache coding feature, and maybe it's because I'm just not up to date with what cache coding can do for us. But to me, I didn't have that functionality to do that. So even in the video, I'll bring the video back. Share screen. So over here, look, I've ticked. Have I gone too far? There we are. So I've ticked these buttons here, and my only option at the top is uncheck all. Not going to help me. Disregard changes won't help me. And then finally, I'd apply rule, but I didn't have any rules applied because I'm just jumping straight into the code. Maybe if I created the rules first, and thinking about it, right? Yeah, maybe if I'd created the rules first and used that workflow, it might have been easier for me to have been able to put that data in. But that just seemed like an extra step that was unnecessary. Why am I creating rules now? Realistically, in the QuickBooks world, if we know, right? If we add 5 transactions at a time, then a rule is suggested for me. I didn't get that in Xero. Steph said, we think the opposite. So this over on Instagram, we think the complete opposite. Xero has suited 95% of our clients. But my question to you is, are those 95% of the clients that you've put your question, you've got, that's because you've found clients that are suited for Xero, right? You're marketing for those clients. And maybe you don't even know it, but you're obviously, you want to work with clients you can do your best work with. So you're going to find clients that suit Xero and suit that because that's the platform of choice for you. So it feels like in a Xero world, you're laser focused on what Xero's good at. And that's the right thing to do because that's where you're going to get the most benefit from. But I don't know how big and how small that net is. But you're casting a net for your clients to use Xero, right? And I feel like that's the do like the QuickBooks reconciliation feature of Xero. And Xero's got so much better, right? Like now the fact that it's able to literally have a reconciliation screen, never had that before, that's fantastic. But it does need to go that next step further and lock it in place. Again, Xero's argument is, well, don't get it wrong in the first place, you won't need that. But there's always times when clients accidentally do something, right? Like there's always that time where you want to just go back to a place and go, you know what, 31st of of July, I had it absolutely smashed it. You know, I balanced it to the penny. So I want to go back to the 31st of July at any point, and that's where you get the benefit from there. If you type in the nominal code, it will appear apply to all that's highlighted. Oh, maybe that's where I went wrong then. Maybe I should have just typed it in and go from there. Well, maybe, yeah. So maybe that would have solved a massive point of it, but it wasn't letting me group them. So yeah, and that's what I had in the QuickBooks world. I will try that. I will play around with that. That could be completely on me, and that's why I wanted to ask the question first before I did get slated over items like that. Paul says most people needing to import data will probably have enough Excel knowledge. However, client won't generally have that knowledge. Exactly. Exactly. It took me 5 attempts to get the bank statements from a client the other week. I asked for a PDF version for the bank rec, but they sent me a CS version sent as a PDF. Yeah. So you had the opposite issue, and maybe that's like, I mean, the easiest solution for that, isn't it, is using not Zama, Xavier. No, I forget the solution now. But we do have a solution that we use in our practice where we are able to extract client data quite easily and client invoices quite easily. And it's called Analytics. So yeah, the Analytics idea was to put that data in, and we could send that request to a client. They can go from there. But that's if they have like bank accounts on their phone and stuff like that. So it's not always perfect, and there is a cost involved, but you know, there is an option for us to bring it there if we need to. Cheryl, all the dates where so the file was completely useless to me. Oh yeah. So yeah, that's the problem when you CSV. Yeah, exactly. So they hadn't changed the size of the thing first and going through from there. Cheryl, if all transactions are the same when ticked, they all enter account details, it fills it in. So yeah, I completely forgot about that function. It does ring a bell, actually, yeah. So what you're saying here is when it was ticked like this one here. When it's ticked like this, what I should have done is just put one account in here and the rest would have followed. Yeah, and ticked it through from there and put it through. Yeah, so yeah, my bad on that one. But it doesn't make it very obvious, right? Like there's no obvious way of doing that. It's just you've got to have known it first for you to do that. And in fairness, I kind of remember that functionality. Sort by the description column. Yeah, it was sorted by description, but I still then had to tick 12 transactions, right, or whatever the thing is. You know, this was a year's worth of data. There's only 75 transactions. There's only, you know, but every so often you're going to get that, right? You're going to get 12 of the same transaction. So I had to go ticking them and going through. In reality, I should have used rules. Rules would probably be a quicker way of doing this. But again, from the QuickBooks point of view, if I add those 12, it'd have gone, you've added 12, let's create a rule for it. So next time it's done for you, right? And it's just that little bit of functionality there. Xenon. Yeah, I love Xenon, and Xenon's definitely a solution that I would highly recommend to people, but I'm talking more about getting those bank statements from people. So that's more analytics from there. Or sometimes on Excel, you can split the columns first to get rid of all the fluff on online payments. Yeah, exactly. And that's where having some kind of confidence in how to use Excel and be able to manipulate Excel is a benefit, right? And I think we take it for granted as accountants and bookkeepers, right? We're always just jumping into Excel, or we'll just change this, and you know, sum if or if statements and all those sort of vertical lookups, whatever you want to do. Like I love a good Excel document. I'll always go through and kind of do it. But can we expect our clients to be, you know, comfortable in using Excel? I feel like that's where it gets difficult, doesn't it? And another shout out for Xenon as well. Yeah, we love Xenon here. So yeah, I think that was pretty much it from my point of view. By the sounds of it, I messed up a little bit on the coding side of things by being able to tick, and then put the code in. Realistically, how much will that save me? Probably, well, a good 2 minutes or so, I'd say, because I still have to tick the individual transactions, then find one, then put them in, then put the VAT in and put it through from there. Whereas in the QuickBooks world, I was able to use what's called the grouping feature, where all of the, you know, go cardless, all of the BTs, all of those ones were already grouped for me. So they're already there as basically one transaction. I tick it, tell it what I want to do for that whole group. Off to the races I go. And again, it came then with a pop-up to say, oh, that's interesting. All of those were the same. Do you want to create a rule or not? So that means if we did this for year 2, I'm going to be even quicker, right? Like most of that noise, most of all of those information is going to be straight in there. Well over 95% of this particular exercise means that year 2, they're ready to go there. So again, in the zero world, I should have followed the correct way. I should have taken that a little bit longer on year 1, created the rules, gone through that process, gone through not using the cache coding, but on the other screen, so that next year 2, I'd be in the same boat with QuickBooks. But then how much longer would that have taken for that first year? And that's what you've got to take into account, right? And I feel like that's where I am at the moment, where I feel like QuickBooks versus Xero, if you've got the ideal client, Xero is wonderful. If you try and go out of that in any way, you try and fight against the Xero way, then that's when you got a problem. That's when you're going to cause yourself some issues. Yeah. You can, and in Instagram, we're talking about how you can arrange the cache coding feature by price or supply by clicking the header. Yeah. And I had already done that to get the description. Again, in the QuickBooks world, the nice feature they have is what's called grouping. So you do it by description, but then you turn on grouping and it groups those all together for you, right? So that then you can deal with them as basically one transaction. So all 12 BT payments that you've had in that year all comes into basically one transaction. Click that, tell it what it's going to be done, and then it'll prompt you to create it. Also on the reconciliation screen, it will autofill if you pull the same supply nominal a few times. Yeah, exactly. And that's why I feel like I messed up by relying on the cache coding area. I think realistically in a solution like that, I should have stayed in the reconciliation page, because like you said, then I would have had the chance to be able to go in and put rules in place. It would start learning. It would have all of that goodness. And I feel like it was my bad for trying to use the cache coding. But I remember cache coding being that, that feature just to get data in quickly. That's what I remember cache coding being. And I always remember it being a really cool feature where I could just very similar to how it used to work in Sage 950, wasn't it? It was that kind of, let's just get the data in there. Let's just tell it what it is and push it through from there. But I wrongly assume that cache coding will also have the extra features like the AI stuff and machine learning, all that went with it. So yeah, I feel like that's where I'm going to get the criticism from, is why use cache code in the first place? Why not spend that extra bit of time on the main reconciliation screen? Although it shouldn't be reconciliation screen. That the name reconciliation screen winds me up, because it should never be that. And there was it. That was my rant over QuickBooks versus Xero. Thank you everyone for joining in and making this conversation exciting. Next week, Johann will be back, and we'll be back to our normal conversation topics. Hopefully we'll have more news to talk through as well. There are some news articles that I have kind of held back so that we can figure out what Johann's conversation is going to be. And I'm sure he's going to give us feedback of what he thought of these last couple of things are going to be. So we'll give him a chance to feedback on these solo videos. And that'll be interesting to see what his response will be for that one. Right, everybody. Thank you again for today's video. Thank you for today's podcast. Thank you everyone who's talked. It's been a very lively conversation going on, but I think every time we talk about QuickBooks with Xero, you're going to get that right. People defending their Xero ways and the others defending their QuickBooks ways, which we like to see. Look out for videos coming out in the next couple of days. We've got a couple more QuickBooks Ask the Accountant. We have Cool Friends, and no, we don't have Cool Friends one. Sorry, Ask the Accountant podcast pit stops. We got a few of them coming out, and we had a few get sent out yesterday as well, or last week as well. So this week coming up, we have the 26th. We have Zoe and Joe with their conversation they had with Johann at Podcast Pit Stop. I've got my conversation with Buddy HR that's just went live this time. And it wasn't long ago, it was only this time last week, where Paul, who was in the chat, had his conversation on over at the one, and that's been doing really well. So definitely go and have a look at that one. And we've got the Amy and James one, which is great because they're fellow podcasters as well. So it's great to hear them ones going forward. Right. I've got work to do. I'm sure you guys have as well. Thank you again for coming along to this little episode. Don't forget, if you are watching back to us live or back to us on any of those platforms, why not join us live 8:30 a.m. for a nice little one? And I tell you what I forgot to run the advert. So I'm going to finish on the advert and I'm going to leave from there. So here's our wonderful Apron ad, showing you why Apron is just so good at what it does. See you all next week. Bye for now.
I'm here with my friends over at Apron, our new sponsor, and we've got an amazing feature that just went live. It's called Capture, and this is going to revolutionize the way you get data from your client. Watch this. Get the receipt, take the photo, bish, bash, done. That's it. This is going to be dead quick, dead straightforward, dead simple, and more importantly, easy for your clients to use. Did I tell you got WhatsApp as well? What more do you want?